Well, hey everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. If you're enjoying this podcast, I'd like to start by asking you all to do me a favor. Can you write a review or two? Haven't had too many reviews, so it's hard for me to know if I'm screwing up or doing a good job or not. So I love the feedback. So please bring it on your favorite podcast platform review or here on YouTube. Today, we're joined by a really special guest, another Kiwi, and her name is Avalon Lewis. Avalon is another one of New Zealand's most accomplished motorcycle racers. Her story started in New Zealand. Like a lot of kids, she started on dirt bikes. Her dad encouraged her to ride. She actually started a lot later in life, like she was a teenager when she started racing motorcycles for the first time, which is also just an incredible story. And after winning the National Pro Twins title back in New Zealand, I did some racing in Australia and then went to the European circuit and actually was won a couple of titles in Europe in the women's competition there, and also raced competitively, very competitively, with the men over there. Since then, she took a break, started a family. Her husband is also a racer, so it's in the blood, and they now have a toddler to deal with, but somehow she's managed to find time to go back to racing, and she's racing for the first time this year in the WCR women's supersport competition on the Yamaha R7s, and she's racing for the Carl Cox racing team. And already she is like fiercely in the top 5, depending on the race, and honestly should have podiumed the last couple of races for reasons that were not her fault. And so I've been really enjoying watching her, and she races for Carl Cox, who's like my favorite DJ. Hey, Carl. I've seen Carl like literally probably 20 times in different parts of the world, including Ibiza over the 90s in particular. And so, yeah, cool team, cool woman, cool family, very, very fast racer, and so much energy. So let's pop over now and have a chat with Avalon and get to know her and her story a little bit. Avalon Lewis.
Yeah.
Great to meet you. Although I know that you're also known as another name, right? Formerly known as
Biddle is my maiden name. Yeah. So you can call me Avgas.
Avgas, that's right. Avgas on Instagram, right?
Yeah. I'm pretty commonly called that, to be fair.
Well, look, it's an honor to have you here. You're one of New Zealand's most accomplished, inspiring motorcycle racers. You're a former European Women's Cup champion. You're a National Pro Twins title holder in New Zealand, and now you're a fierce competitor. They call you a rookie in the inaugural women's circuit racing world championship. But I think you're far from a rookie, and I wanted to have this podcast so folks could learn a bit about you and your journey. You're a trailblazer for Kiwi racers. You're a proud new mom, and clearly, you're not slowing down. So welcome, Avalon.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. And yeah, it does make me laugh when I'm called a rookie in WCR, because I have been around for a long time, but yeah, it's my first year racing in the Women's World Championship. I missed out on the first season last year. So I love being called a rookie up against all those youngsters. I think it's awesome. But I do have a pretty long history in the sport and plenty to talk about, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like a lot of great people from New Zealand, sometimes folks don't quite know what a proud history we have, whether it's Bruce McLaren in F1 and Scott Dixon in IndyCar, Simon Crafar. It was interesting watching the British GP. And the last time a New Zealander won the MotoGP was Simon against McDougall. When he beat him, he won that championship. Been a while, right? So
exactly.
Let's talk about, I'd love to go back to where it started. I had a rumor that you came from the same town as me, right? Where are you from?
I'm Auckland. Yeah. So I think the same. I grew up on the Hibiscus Coast, and my mum still lives in Orewa, so north of Auckland. Yeah. How about yourself?
You're much younger than me, but I was raised on the North Shore in Takapuna.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and then went to then lived in Epsom and Ponsonby for a long time. So yeah, small place. I'm sure we have friends in common. We can talk about that afterwards. But yeah, I'm just imagining you like ripping around the Coromandel and then sort of the northern New Zealand back roads. Is that how it all got started for you? Or did you find a motorcycle and start riding on the street up there?
No, not at all. I haven't actually done a lot of road riding at all, to be honest. I started younger riding mini motocross, so I think anyone who in New Zealand, if they're lucky enough to have parents that are supportive of motorcycles, then they would get started in mini motocross. So I did that with North Harbour and North Harbour Mini Motocross Club. And then my dad started racing at the local go-kart track, Mount Wellington go-kart track, which is where Scott Dixon started racing. So a lot of Americans would know him. And they did little bucket racing around the go-kart track there. And I had to wait until I was 13 to give it a go. So I was still well too young to have a road license, but compared to the rest of the world, it's actually quite late to get started in circuit racing at 13. So I think it was on my 13th birthday, I was there, geared up, ready to give it a go. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were 13 when you said that. Is really, really young. And it's interesting you talk about riding on the road. I interviewed Rocco Landers a few weeks ago, who's a Moto America racer, and he doesn't have a license. He's never ridden on the road ever.
Yeah, it's actually very different, to be honest. Yeah, it's just really different. You know yourself, there's so many different factors on the road compared to going fast on a racetrack. So yeah, I've done a bit of both now, but I prefer racing, I have to say.
Yeah, no, for sure. And what was that first mini moto bike? What was it? Do you remember?
At the go-kart track.
Yeah.
Yes.
RD
So the first one I tried was a RG50. So they like the little two-stroke. So the original rules of bucket racing, which is what it was called at the time, it's miniature road racing is the more formal term, but we called it bucket racing, which stands for buckets of junk. And they had to be formally road bikes, or be able to be registered as a road bike. So we used commonly RG50 to race in. There's two classes, either like 50cc 2-stroke, 100cc 4-stroke, or slightly bigger 150cc 4-stroke. So very, very small bikes. Started on the RG50, but then my dad built me a XR100, so like they could be registered as a farm bike. But it was literally just an XR with 100 with clip-on handlebars and some different foot pegs, so they were slightly higher. And some like road tires. So that was the bike I rode for maybe 6 months, and I pretty quickly outgrew that.
Wow. And were you riding bicycles before then? Like, did you have a bicycle or?
Yeah, I was into everything with two wheels, really. And motorsport in general. Like I wanted to give go-karting, the speedway, and everything a go. But yeah, I've always grown up riding two wheels. It's on both sides of my family. So yeah,
that's interesting. So your mom and dad also rode?
No, my mum cannot ride a bicycle. But her parents owned a bicycle and mower shop. She's from Sydney in Australia, so they owned a cycle shop growing up. So yeah, her brothers are in the cycling industry and things like that. And my dad's side of the family, the Biddle family, are quite well known in cycling in New Zealand. My uncle was a Commonwealth Games champion and got bronze at the Olympics in road cycling. So there
you go. There you go. That's the nugget. That's really interesting. And without getting too geeky, I suppose at the end of the day, you're on a gyroscope, right? Doesn't matter if it's two wheels with a motor or pedals. There's something about being on a gyroscope and understanding that you're on a gyroscope that is genetic for you guys.
Yeah, I guess so. We had a really, really steep driveway growing up, and I just remember my brother and I just hammering down this driveway, and it was a concrete wall at the bottom. If it went wrong, it was going to go really wrong. But yeah, we spent a lot of time on bicycles growing up. But the funny thing is that racing motocross, I didn't really take to it. I really enjoyed it and really enjoyed the trail rides as a young kid, but I was awful at jumps. Pretty much never left the ground. All the other kids just jumped over the top of me and I rolled over them. So yeah, didn't really take to motocross like I did to road racing.
Interesting. Were there other sports that you were interested in or very competitive in as well? Or
my mum forced me to do Irish dancing as a kid, so
Oh,
I wouldn't say I was great at it, but a lot of time and effort went into that. And then just netball and all your usual kids that happen at New Zealand schools. So yeah, pretty active growing up, but yeah, nothing I ever took seriously like I did with motorcycle racing. Pretty much from the day I started on that go-kart track, I knew that it was something I wanted to do.
awesome. So how do you go? So you go from a go-kart track and being from New Zealand. I know at the time, I mean, I'm much older than you, but there was really only one place. It was Taupo and there was Pukekohe. And Pukekohe was very scary. I know Simon Crayfile grew up riding there, so, he did okay. But
Yeah.
what was your first, race experience? Do you remember? Can you share that with us a little bit?
Yeah, so the bucket racing in New Zealand was quite competitive at the time. So we did a race every month there, and a lot of the more competitive riders from like 600s and all that raced at the bucket track just throughout the year to get more seat time. So they gave me a lot of coaching, and then they were obviously really involved in the New Zealand road racing scene. And they actually directed us to get in touch with Pete Jones in the South Island, who headed up the street stock 150 racing, which were 150 two-strokes, mostly RG 150, so out of Thailand. And they said, oh, there's this massive street stock 150 scene in the South Island, like you should go down and give it a go. And I remember spending hours, like the internet was relatively new back then, shows my age. And I remember spending hours like looking up all the photos and being like, look at all these guys. Because at the bucket track, I was the only kid. I mean, there were a few guys, maybe 16, 17 years old and stuff. But I was the only young. And then there was just all these young kids, and they went training after school. Like on a Friday, they went out to the track after school and rode. And yeah, it just was unfathomable for me. Like you say, coming from the North Island, where at the time Taupo was like the old Taupo club track, and then Pukekohe didn't race anything under like a 125 two-stroke because it's so fast and flowing, the smaller bikes just blow up there. So because you're just wide open on the throttle all the time. So yeah, we actually ended up flying down to the South Island, staying with one of the families, another girl who raced with her dad, and yeah, stayed with the family. Went down, there's like 50 bikes on the grid, 50 of all these kids that would turn up after school and get some practice in on a Friday afternoon and then go racing on the weekends. So yeah, got really involved in that pretty quickly because I just loved it. It was awesome. And they did a lot of coaching and things like that down there. So it sort of kept the cycle going of getting new riders into the sport and like getting faster and faster and faster. So yeah, a lot of those guys are still my friends today, and yeah, it's really cool to see how far that program there in the South Island got so many riders. And then
That's
from
awesome.
there it just escalated really.
You've mentioned the South Island many times, and for those of the listeners who don't know, New Zealand is a small rock at the bottom of the South Pacific, and there's two major islands, the North and the South Island. But for a small country with about 5 million people now, it's interesting, Avalon, that you mentioned the South Island, because it seems like the South Island has been a breeding ground for not just yourself and your generation, but the newer generation as well. Cormac Buchanan just loved everything he got there. Burt Munro, go way, way back. Tell me about the South Island. What is it about the South Island, New Zealand, that has developed so much talent?
Look,
Do you
I
know,
think
or
it
is it just a thing? Or?
I think it probably comes down to the clubs. I think what most people don't realize about New Zealand, because they think of it as such a small country, is that it's actually geographically very dispersed. So there are some challenges that I think most people don't realize, like the length of the South Island is 12 hours driving more. So yeah, but there are some very strong clubs down there, Motorcycling Canterbury. So I've been a member with them for a long time now, and they've always had a really, really strong junior training program. But the Southland Club obviously really got behind Cormac and have been really supportive of their junior riders as well. So I think it comes down to those clubs supporting the juniors so well. And it's just over the last couple of years, I've noticed that the North Island clubs are really trying to follow suit and tag along with what they're doing. So hopefully we can see some more support there for the North Island, because my first ever New Zealand Championship race meeting was in Invercargill. So being from Auckland, literally other end of the country, and we bought a bike off Trade Me for $800, went around to the guy's house, literally pulled it out of his garden shed. We spray painted the fairings black and then drove, however, probably a 20-hour trip by the time you throw the ferry in there as well to get to Invercargill to race the New Zealand Championship on this bike. So it would be great for and it is happening nowadays where youngsters in Auckland like you or I could get started much closer to home.
A big shout out to those guys. I mean, it's really cool, and so that's interesting. So you bought a bike off Trade Me, which is kind of the equivalent of eBay, basically. And this is your first race. And were you invited to race, or could anyone just sign up and race?
No, pretty much anyone could turn up. There was 55 of us on the grid, so I think about 50 juniors, and then like 5 parents that tagged on.
Okay. And what was the format? Was there was qualifying and all of that, or was it not? Was just free for it?
It still follows a similar suit today. So New Zealand Championship, we'd have practice on a Friday, so they just rotate through sessions on a Friday, get heaps of track time, and then generally a practice and a qualifying on Saturday, followed by the first race, and then 2 races on Sunday. So heaps of track time. Still really follows that format these days.
That's cool. And obviously, you and I talked a little bit offline around, women in sport in general is sort of one of the many areas where we're finally starting to see more investment and promotion. And while I know that by default, you've had to race in mixed competition your whole career, right?
Yeah.
And I want to talk a bit about that, but like when you turned up at the track for the first time and started winning, did folks know you were a woman because, you got a helmet on and all your gear? Or was it because often women pass me all the time at the track, and then they take their helmets off and I'm like, I just got passed by a girl again. And, I don't know until they take their helmets off. So tell me about that experience. Was that difficult or not for you?
I've never found it difficult myself, and it does make me laugh when people are like, oh, you're a girl. I think it comes back to the first days that I started racing at the go-kart track, and it wasn't really so much that I was the only female. There were a few females there riding, but more that everyone was so much older, and so I never thought about it that I was so different to everybody else. Everyone's super friendly, and that's still the case in New Zealand motorcycle racing today. That it's so friendly, and it does make me think sometimes, if I saw these people in a cafe or something, I probably wouldn't talk to them, but because you have that common aspect of motorcycle racing and that you have in common, I see these people at the track and I've seen them for the last 20 years and say good day, have a great chat, I'd call them my friends, and everyone in motorcycle racing in New Zealand is like that, really. So I never thought about being a female other than, yes, a lot of the young boys didn't like being beaten by a girl from Auckland, especially. There's a bit of rivalry in New Zealand, especially for some reason between Canterbury and Auckland. So they didn't like being beaten by me, but I mean that's the same. I don't like being beaten by anyone. So
right. Here we go. Tell me more about that. So we could talk for hours. So one of the things, I interviewed Matt Oxley a few months ago, Matt, and he said to me, Angus, racers are stone cold killers. They're killers. They're serial killers. They want to win, and they're serial killers on the bike, but most of them are not serial killers off the bike. Would you describe yourself as a cold, hard killer? You just want to win all the time? Is that generally the way you roll in all your parts of your life, or just racing?
I'd like to think it's not, even in racing, it's probably not to quite that extent, but I definitely am only competitive on the bike. I wouldn't say I'm a super duper competitive person. If we went and played tennis or something, like everyone, I don't like losing, but I definitely more so in motorcycle racing than anything else. But I guess I'm probably more give everything 100% is probably what carries through to my normal day life as well.
Cool.
Hard to describe that one, but I think I remember being absolutely distraught that first race meeting in the New Zealand Championship in Invercargill. I think I won the first 2 races, and then in the third race I was battling with a guy who I'd been battling with all weekend, and he outbraked me and crashed as he outbraked me and took me down with him. And I remember I was so angry, and I when I came back in, I threw my gloves in the thing like I seen them do MotoGP on TV.
Yeah.
Because I was so annoyed. So I guess, very, very competitive. But I also remember at the time, this is an absolute no-no, would not happen these days, but my dad was in the same, someone had lent him a bike, so he was in the same race, and he saw that I'd crashed, so he pulled over to see if I was all right, which you just like wouldn't do these days. And he said, oh, you ride my bike back to the pits. So I jumped on his, and he said, I'll get the crashed bike back. So I jumped on his bike and the race was still going. I thought I might as well finish the race. So I rode around, finished the race.
Classic. And where did you end up placing in the race?
I don't know, but that's the funny thing is that I remember like later that day looking at the lap times. I was like, oh, Dad, you did a way faster lap time in the last race. And he was like, that was you.
That's awesome. That's
Even
awesome.
after getting back on and riding his bike, which was a Kawasaki and mine was a Suzuki, I still went faster than he did all weekend. So that's pretty funny.
Oh, your parents must be so proud of you. A lot of some of the younger kids that I've interviewed, who've sort of been brought up on the track of their parents. I interviewed Kenzie a couple of weeks ago, Kenzie Masahiro, who's the US. He's won 3 Moto America championships in the junior class, and now he's in Europe, and he's 15. And I said, are you faster than your dad now? And his dad goes, no, he's not faster than me. I was like, oh, he must be faster than you. That's cool. And so that's a cool story. And so tell me, you won a few New Zealand championships, right? So tell me a bit about that.
Actually, in the early days, I never won one. And so the Street Stock 150 was kind of just a support class at New Zealand Championships, and then so we moved up from there onto 125 Grand Prix bikes, and I ended up runner-up twice. I think my first season I was 4th in the championship. I broke my femur at Pukekohe, went into the wall going over the hill there. The first year I did it, so that put an early end to my championship and ended up 4th. And then, the next 2 years trying to win it, I was 2nd 2 years in a row. So, I was pretty gutted with that at the time. And my dad and I put so much effort into those 125 GP bikes. That's so much work. And we generally ran the bike ourselves with some help from other people. So we didn't know what we were doing to begin with, but learnt the ropes pretty quickly. So, it was a massive few years racing that 125, and we ended up taking it over in a suitcase to Australia and racing in Australia a bit because they're so small. We just broke it down into parts and brought it over with us, and eventually resulted in a wild card at MotoGP in the 125 Grand Prix class, the last ever year that it was 125 two-strokes before it went to Moto3. Got a wild card there, which was really cool, but we really struggled getting the bike tuned for the correct fuel that they have to run in the class. So didn't end well. My bike ended up seizing, going into Honda hairpin, now Miller corner, and smacked me in the head and knocked me out in the process. And that's actually one time that the marshals were like, they took my helmet off because I was KO'd, took my helmet off, and they're like, oh, whoa, it's a girl.
That's hilarious.
MotoGP, and they didn't realize that there was any girls competing.
That's hilarious. So you took your motorcycle over in a suitcase and assembled it like a few days later.
To do the first races in Australia, we did exactly that for MotoGP. The wildcard, we put it in a crate and shipped it over. A little bit more sophisticated, but we still took all the tools and stuff in our suitcase over there. So
Have any women raced at that level before you? Like, do you know?
Yeah, there were a few doing like trying to make it and doing wild cards. And funnily enough, one of them, I remember her name so clearly, was Ornella Ongaro, and she was really fast in France and on a 125 and did a wild card at Le Mans, and she was, I don't know if she finished in the points, but she was fast throughout the weekend. Funnily, Ornella and we joke now that we're like the grandmothers of the WCR paddock because she's here racing in WCR as well. So pretty crazy. There were definitely a few girls for me to look up to, but it was unique at the time. Yeah.
I noticed that she was racing. So much to talk about, but before we get WCR, I definitely want to, I think what a lot of folks I meet don't understand is how much work there is from the beginning on everyone in your community, your family, your friends, and how much sacrifice there is to get to the level you've competed. And even at the Moto3 level, like Cormac, I'm sponsoring Cormac in the Mugello race, by the way.
Yes, good on you.
And like
He deserves
you just got to keep grinding, right? So at that level, was it pretty expensive too, just to like, what was the deal? Did you have sponsors then, or was it just friends and family helping out?
Yeah, we were grinding really hard to be able to do what we were doing. Like, I worked a job on the weekends and in school holidays literally since I started racing. So since I was like 13, 14 years old. So my parents said, if it's something you want to do, like, you're going to have to help chip in. So yeah, and then we went down the hunt, like, trying to find sponsors. I think at one stage we had a list of like 200 companies that we had approached in New Zealand for sponsorship and hadn't had a huge amount of luck. We had people jump on board and companies jump on board here and there, but a lot of it was still funded by my parents. And we were absolutely maxed out doing what we were doing just in New Zealand and Australia. And I always had that ambition to go overseas, to go to Europe and try race in a world championship. But there was no way that we could afford it. And we were always looking for that lucky break, I guess. And never got it in 125s. Like you'd know with Cormac, it is just so expensive going down that MotoGP route. And we just couldn't find the money. And it was really, really taxing. I think it's one of like the hardest parts of the sport. Probably the hardest part of the sport is just that constant grind of trying to find the funding, particularly when you're from the other side of the world. So eventually, when I did get a chance to go overseas racing, I was 19. To race full time in Europe, I was 19 and I was on a 600. So I had gone from 125 GP 2-stroke to a 600cc 4-stroke. There was nothing in between at the time, no 300s, nothing like that. So a massive step. I rode the 600 for 4 months in New Zealand and then got this opportunity to piggyback on the back of Fred Merkel, former World Superbike champion. His son was going to Italy to race on a 600, and two very, very generous individuals, Phil and Cheryl London, headed up a organisation called WorldWCR at the time, and they supported both Travis and I to go race in the Italian in a CBR Cup in Italy, basically. So yeah, very different path to what I thought I would ever be going down, but that's where I got my chance to eventually go to Europe and race.
Oh, great. That's a great transition. I want to go there. And I think before you go there, what I'm curious is, who are your heroes that you looked up to in the paddock, professional or anywhere? Were there folks that were inspiring for you, heroes? Obviously, you mentioned a couple of sponsors who helped you out, but who are your heroes?
I mean, I look up to so many people and it definitely changes throughout the years. But probably in the early days, definitely Aaron Slide. Like, he is my first memory of motorcycle road racing. It was on TV, and my dad, like, I must have only been 7 or 8 years old at the time, and my dad said, "Oh, that guy on the white bike is a Kiwi," and I remember that so clearly because he was number 111 on the white Castrol Honda in World Superbike racing at the front, and I was pretty captivated by that. So yeah, Aaron I've definitely looked up to, and he now supports myself and Billy to race in WCR, which is incredible. I've spent a bit of time with him at the track over the years, and yeah, he's an awesome person, so very cool to have him on board. And then there's of course Simon Crafer, and then all the Aussies who raced, that being from down under, you kind of look up to anyone who is from this side of the world racing in Europe. So I remember very clearly watching Troy Corser and Troy Bayliss battling it out in World Superbike, and then in more recent years raced in the Australian Championship for a season and rode alongside Troy's son Ollie. And yeah, I really nowadays look up. I remember at the time I really liked Troy Corser because he's so smooth, and I really liked his riding style. But Bayliss, as a person, he is just incredible. He is the most friendly, down to earth, funny guy, and really gives back a lot to the sport and to youngsters. At the most recent WCR race meeting in Cremona, he was there supporting Ollie, but he was over in the WCR paddock talking to us riders. He would give anyone time of day. So yeah, I think people like that over the years I've come into contact with and just really look up to them. and really admire what they achieved. But aside from that, I still really respect and take a bit of inspiration from the guys that I've grown up racing with in New Zealand, because like you said at the beginning, like they don't get a lot of recognition for what they achieve, and like we just have so much fun going racing, and everyone works so hard for it. Like we all have normal jobs, and then I think like what we can go do on the weekends, the guys, they build their own bikes as well. Like I'm not mechanically clued up enough to do that, but most of my competitors will build their own bikes, drive themselves to race meetings, race on the weekends with their family there, and then go home and earn a living for their family. So I think that passion that they have like just really drives me, because I share that same passion, and I would do anything to be able to compete in the sport like I am now. So yeah, that them, and my husband Jake is the same. He's raced at really, really high level, won the European Junior Championship against Augusto Fernandez, who's now been a MotoGP rider. So yeah, I think that there's definitely the talent there, and they really inspire me, like how humble they are, and that they just go racing for the sake of enjoying racing and trying to win, rather than for the fame and fortune that maybe comes with racing in MotoGP or something like that. So yeah,
that's cool. So, no, this is why we're here. So you and your hubby, you met in the paddock then, huh?
Yeah. Actually, Invercargill is the first time I remember speaking to him, but yeah, we've raced a lot over the years. And Jake was racing in Europe when I was racing this CBR Cup that I mentioned on a 600. He was over there racing in the World Superbike paddock in the Junior Cup. So yeah, we spent a bit of time in Europe together, and he
was your umbrella boy, I think.
Yeah.
I thought that was awesome, by the way. When we get WCR, we'll talk about that. And he's an Ocker, right? He's an Aussie.
No, he's a Kiwi. He's from Christchurch.
Okay. Your mum's an Ocker.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
so for audience, Ocker being Aussie, Kiwis and Aussies tend to get along really well, except for when it comes to certain sports when we hate each other. There are some New Zealanders who are born in New Zealand but claim to be Australian, some whom I like, some who I don't. You're definitely one who I like because you're a Kiwi.
Thank you.
You know, there are a few others that we won't talk about. Russell Crowe, sorry. Yeah, so that's awesome. So you go to Europe, you've got some wonderful mentors and sponsors you look up to. Aaron Slate was also one of my heroes, by the way.
Yeah.
And did he ride the Britain motorcycle at Laguna Seca, or who was that? That was
Andrew. I think that's Andrew Stroud.
Andrew Stroud, yeah, he's another one that I would love to one day meet. I got to meet Simon, and it was so cool because I still have his podcast just for a bit of fun, and so I sent him a note thinking, oh, he's not going to answer, you know, and he answered and said, yeah, sweet, I'll come on your podcast. I was like, cool, like. That's such a Kiwi thing. And so it's so great to have you here because I reached out to Mallory Dobbs and she said, yeah, I know her, but I don't really know her that well. So I'm not sure I can get her on your podcast. And then I think it was Cormac's mom that connected me to you. So that's cool. So, okay. So you end up in Europe. And so at the time in Europe, you know, I don't want to keep bringing out women's competition because a lot of riders I interview are like, hey, I'm a racer. I don't care who it is. I just happen to be a woman or identify as a woman. But for you at the time, was there what were the tracks into racing? Were there women's competitions, or did you just turn up straight away and race with the boys?
Yeah, so this was actually a little bit unique. Is that I went over to race in the CBR 600 Cup, so just a stock CBR 600s basically, and it was quite an attractive championship because there was a bit of prize money for the top 5. So there were some really competitive, like former World Supersport riders and stuff that were racing in that championship, like just to get the prize money. But then it was also sort of seen as the pathway to get into the Italian championship. And then if you're fast in Italian championship on a 600 and 600 Supersport or something, you're pretty likely to get a ride in World Supersport. So that was kind of like a pathway that I was following. But it was only when I was in Italy, I think maybe after the first test or something that we did, that I realized there was an Italian women's championship, and a couple of the races were the same events that I was already going to for the CBR 600 Cup. So then hit up Phil Venturo and I was like, hey, I'm already here.
Who was it you said? Who was that?
Phil and Cheryl, who were my sponsors at the
Okay.
time, was then like, hey, actually, I could do the Italian Women's Championship as well. So yeah, ended up doing that. I got second in it that year because I crashed out of one of the races in the wet at Mazzano, which was annoying. But yeah, was able to do both the CBR 600 Cup and the Women's Championship. There was just nothing. There were no women's championships that were solid enough that I guess that you would aspire to do it as an end thing. So I don't think that women's championship even happened again the following year. It had been going for 5 or 10 years prior to that, but it was, I guess, just sort of an add-on. So I definitely just always looked at racing with the males, and I knew from 125 GP bikes that I could be competitive with them. But the 600, to begin with, it's just so hard, and especially when you go to Italy. Like, I know we were speaking earlier about Kayla Yakov, and I mean, like, she could attest to that. Like, you think you're fast on it, in particular on a 600, and then you go somewhere like Italy and race in the Italian Championship, and it is just mind-boggling how fast they can ride, and I just didn't have that level of experience. So at that point I knew it was going to be a long road ahead. I probably didn't really know what was in store, but I still just I enjoyed racing with the men. I still do. I wouldn't see it as an obstacle, but I think now having the Women's World Championship is really great, like publicity for women in the sport, and it gives some younger girls something to aspire to that's, I guess, more affordable and just more accessible for more females around the world. So I love the idea of WCR. I wish that it was around when I was younger, but obviously it wasn't. And I just raced with the men and didn't really think anything of it.
Well, I'm getting up early in the morning and watching all the WCR races, and I definitely want to get to that. I also get up, by the way, and watch all the women's rugby as well. I like watching women's sport. I find it honestly to be more interesting. I don't know why. It's kind of how I roll. But let's keep. So you're very humble, like a lot of Kiwis I meet. You did pretty well in Europe, right? So before you ended up in WCR, I know you had started a family and all that, but the former European Women's Cup, you mentioned it was very short-lived, but the commentators and the WCR all seem to know you. Like, you had a reputation for being pretty fierce competitor and doing well there. So tell us what happened, because they're all, I swear that you're their favorite. They keep talking about you with your maiden name all the time. They're like, oh, here she is. It's like she never left, and she's already in the top 5. And you are, like, it's cool. So tell me about that. Like, what happened, like, between...
long lot happened. So I did 2 years on a 600 in Italy in the CBR Cup, which was ultra competitive. And to be fair, my second season in there, it was probably still some of the rides that I'm most proud of to date, because, like I said, it's just so hard. Like, Caracasulo came through. I remember him because I remember his really long last name, and I was like, who is this kid? He's pretty fast. So I was racing with guys like that, and in the second season I was battling for 5th, and I remember because there was prize money for the top 5, and at Imola I was like battling between 6th and 5th, and I was like, I'm going to do anything I can to beat this guy. And he braked really late going into one of the chicanes. I thought, he's braking real late, but I'll just brake where he brakes, because I was that overcome. Like, it was so stupid, but I was that overcome with beating him, and he crashed because he braked really late, and I went down as well. But to think that I was running like top 5 in a championship like that, I guess shows the improvement in my riding that I made over those couple of years. And like, it was such a hard graft. I got the team, like, I didn't have the money to be doing what I was doing, but I still managed to convince the team to like take me to go-kart track, because I really struggled in the change of direction, because bikes are so fast and you're riding places like Mugello where it's like 3rd, 4th gear changing direction. So my team manager over there, Andrea Zappa, was a really fast rider himself, so I got him to take me to a go-kart track and like ride a 600 at a go-kart track so that I can practice. And I think it just really showed that improvement in my riding over those couple of years. And then that was reflected in New Zealand, because I'd go back and race at home and on a 600, and I got much faster there, and was all of a sudden like riding almost at the front in the 600 class, whereas like when I first got on the bike, I'd really struggled with it. So a lot of grinding went in, and then we just couldn't afford to keep doing that championship. So I got the opportunity to ride a Moto3 bike, but it was a essentially a prototype. The Rumi family in Italy had designed and made the bike themselves. So it was originally a 125 GP bike, quite competitive, and then they'd built a 4-stroke engine to put in it. But the year that I rode it was incredibly unreliable. And I finished 2 out of, I think it was 10 or 14 races throughout the season. I finished 2 races, and one of them I finished with oil all over my back tire. And I was like, it was so slippery. I said to them that it was spitting oil out. It was so slippery, it was all over my boot. They said, yeah, we were putting the pit board out trying to get you to pull in. But I just wasn't looking at the pit board.
That's really funny.
To finish that race. So yeah, I had a few really, really rough seasons, and I remember it at the time. It was what it was for me. But I remembered at the time Chris Osborne, who runs Aussie Performance in New Zealand and who's been like, I just wouldn't have achieved what I have without him. He gave me an opportunity to ride a Formula 3 bike. I won't go into the story, but he said, like, I just want you to ride something that's reliable and show how good you are, because like I'd just been struggling for years on end by that point, and just financially, and I'd worn myself out by doing back-to-back seasons, racing in Europe and then coming home racing in New Zealand, and I was working amongst all this, and just so much going on. And I think that's when I realized like what a hard road it had been to get that far, when Chris was like, just come ride my bike, it will be competitive, and I just want you to have something good to ride. And then that's when the European Junior Cup the following year, they had been riding on CBR 500s, and they went to the CBR 650 and started a women's cup inside the European Women's Championship. So when it all looked like it was falling apart, and I definitely was thinking I wouldn't be able to go back to Europe, we sort of got that golden opportunity of the European Junior Cup with the Women's Cup run inside it. So we raced all together with the boys, but there was 10 spots on the grid that were allocated to female competitors. And we scored, as a female, you scored points for both the Women's Championship and the European Junior Championship. So yeah, really awesome series, very affordable, run inside World Superbike. So as you say, you're in the paddock, great support around you, and some real opportunity there. So I won the women's side of it the 2 years that it ran, and the second year I won every women's race of the year, which was my goal. So I was happy to achieve that. And then
rewind. You're so humble. Did you hear that? Like, you won every year, and you won 2 championships in the women's side.
I think that's the thing though, we were racing in together with the boys. So even though you're winning the women's, you're always looking ahead, like you always have something to aspire to. And I think I finished top 6. I think I got 6th at Misano was my best finish in the overall. Yeah.
All genders, 6th.
Yes. Yeah. So I think I was just always looking at the boys in front of me, wanting to beat them as well.
That is so cool. It's so inspiring, because I looked at all the faces of the WCR last year and looking at them this year, and they're all such great kids. And I know there's another Kiwi, Billy Fuller, who's racing. Did you know Billy before you joined the team, or?
I've obviously followed Billy for a couple of years as she's been racing in New Zealand, and I think I saw her talent pretty early on. She's only been racing, I think, maybe 4, 5, 6 years at the absolute most. So definitely not long, considering she's now racing in a world championship. So I saw her like on track ability, and she's pretty fierce out there on track. So followed her, like, I wouldn't say supported her, but just how everyone does in the New Zealand paddock. Like I haven't been in the position to do anything special for her, but I've like always backed her, cheered for her in the races, and she's doing awesome. So we're now teammates in WCR, which is very cool.
Man, this story is so much here. So okay, so I know there are some things you didn't want to dive into, because I know you're also a mom, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but if we can keep talking, we'll tell me when you want me to start. Right. So you've raced at Europe, you've raced down under, and now you're racing at the world level. Obviously, you've told me that funding is one of the big things that is a leap. I'm curious about your point of view on this. So if I look at myself, I'm just a little club rider track day guy, sort of mid-pack A group. I'm not super talented, but I think I have a pretty good mindset. I like to plan and I think hard. I've had a lot of coaching. I've had like 60 days of the California Superbike School. I've had
Wow.
a bunch of days with the Yamaha Champ School, which is run by Freddie Spencer here in the US.
Yeah.
So I like to learn. In your point of view, like when you think about talent and mindset, obviously there are some folks who are aliens and just so talented, and there are others that aren't as talented but have a mindset. Like for you to be successful as a rider, how much is pure talent and how much is sort of a mindset in your experience?
It's so hard.
Is it a hard one? You don't have to answer it, but I'm sort of curious.
No, I mean, it definitely comes down more to mindset than to talent. I think because it's a learned thing, and that's what I try to explain to people, particularly starting on the sport, is that like it's not easy for anybody. Like no one just was born to ride a motorcycle. We say some people were, but like no one knew how to ride a motorcycle when they came out of the womb. Like it's learnt for everybody, so everyone started somewhere, and yeah, some people take to it quicker than others, but it's still hard, like, and it still feels weird. And that's what I would say to people, like when they try to get their knee down. I'm like, I still remember at the go-kart track I was getting my knee down and everyone was like, whoa. They actually had to pull me in because I was wearing a hole through the leathers that I had borrowed because they didn't have knee sliders on, because they weren't expecting someone to just go out and get their knee down on the first session. But that's what I had seen them doing on TV. That's what I saw like MotoGP guys doing. And so I knew that's what you're supposed to do. And I remember thinking, oh, that feels really weird. Like that's like, because you really have to like kind of hang off and like lean off, and you're like, oh, that feels so strange, but they make it look so easy on TV, and that like that's what you're supposed to do. And so yeah, that's what I would say to anybody, is like it's a learned sport. It's learned over time and many years. So I think it definitely comes down to that mindset and having the drive. But yeah, I guess there's so many other factors at play, and like I'm kind of giggling as I'm talking because this guy in New Zealand, Christopher, who says he remembers this conversation with me. I don't remember it, but he said if someone wants to be MotoGP champion, they will. And I argued, well, no, they won't, because there's so many other factors, particularly funding and talent and being in the right team at the right time and not being injured for a few years to get that kind of run in and stuff. Whereas he's very much like, nope, if you're gonna be world champion, you will be. So yeah, for me, I think there's just so many factors at play that sort of go beyond just one thing being more important than the other. But I do think that I like the fact that it's a sport that you can probably go as far as you want to go in it. Like if you're determined and dedicated enough, I'm willing to sacrifice enough normal life things, then you really can go in as far in that sport as you want to.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I find that when I was younger, I didn't listen to anyone. I thought I knew everything. I didn't have a learner's mindset. And now as an old, fat, mid-50s person, I just want to listen and learn. And I don't know if everyone is born a learner, but would you consider yourself someone who's very coachable? Have you been a coachable person throughout your career, or?
Yeah, definitely. And I remember like in the early days, I asked so many questions as well. Like I'd just go to the fastest rider, like New Zealand Championship meeting, I'd just go to whoever was winning the Superbike race at the time, or Sam Smith was the fastest 600 rider and such a nice guy. He was actually probably one of my idols when you mentioned that earlier. And like I'd just go ask him questions all the time. So I didn't think twice about trying to learn more from other people. I'd ask them to come ride with me, which now I'm like, oh, I know how impractical that is to like when you're a top 600 rider or superbike rider and having to jump on a 150 and coach a kid around the track. Sometimes at the end of the day, it's the last thing you feel like doing, but I always asked for those guys. I just always asked for help. So I think that, made a big difference throughout the years. And I say similar to you, one thing I've learned over the years is like you can't do it alone. You think to begin with, like you say, you think that you just put the helmet on, it's just you're really hard-headed, and you think that you just go out there on track and the results are how hard you ride when you're out there on the bike. But there's so much more to it than that. And that's like your learning of like being more open to learning over the years. I guess I've learned that you need to really work as a team, have a really good group of people around you, and really be in it together to be able to get anywhere.
Yeah, I suppose it's worth mentioning also, you talked about a couple of young New Zealand riders that you've been associated with. It's, a little bit of a sidetrack, but I think it's also worth acknowledging we lost Shane Richardson a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you knew Shane. Do you know Shane?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, it's awful. Really, really horrible, particularly after losing Damo last year as well, who the two of them were like such great mates and so competitive and doing such great things for Kiwis in the sport in the UK. So yeah, really devastating. And like everyone says he was just the nicest guy, but Shane was, like, he really was. And I actually didn't race with him a lot on track because in general he was faster than me. He was really bloody fast.
He raced here in the US and Moto America, and he went on to British Superbike, right?
Yeah. But Shane lent me an engine, like that's just normal. Like I blew a bike up in Chicago and we were both on Kawasaki 600s and we just shared parts between each other because that's what you do. And yeah, when my bike blew up, he's like, here's my spare engine, throw it in. So like when people say he's the nicest guy, like he really, really was. So yeah, really hard blow. And Sam Smith, who I mentioned earlier, we've also lost him over the years too. So yeah, it's pretty rough when some of these guys are like your best mates, and you not only are friends with them, but you kind of really idolize them as well. But I guess it gives reason to keep going because you know that's what they'd want.
Yeah, well, much aloha to his whānau. And
exactly.
something that has been on my mind because we're such a small community of sports people that come out of New Zealand and make it to the level where you and he have been. And so thanks for making that sidetrack. It's important. And I think there's a few fun GoFundMes and things for his family. So I'm going to put a link up to that for folks.
Yeah. If you could, that would be great. He's obviously got 2 young kids. So
for sure. Yeah. Well, so we've been going in a lot of really great directions, but building up to the WCR, obviously you're now part of the WCR World Championship, but you're not new to Europe. So before you got there, you decided to get married and start a family. And was that for you, like, were you planning to come back and race, or was it kind of a late breaking opportunity, or what was? So tell me a little bit about that, like, to the extent you want to share. So you have a child. What's your child's name?
Yes,
if you want to share, you don't. It's okay.
Yeah. So Jake and I have a son, Nash. He's 18 months old now. He's very full on. He is 100 miles an hour. He was up since like 5 a.m. this morning, flat out. But no, he's great. And so we just had a very normal life in New Zealand. Really, we had a house and normal jobs, moving up the career ladder, both of us, and then racing throughout summer. Our race season in New Zealand is pretty short. It's only really over summer, the competitive bulk of it, so from December through till March, April. So it's pretty manageable to do. That's kind of your focus over summer, and then the rest of the year we go ride dirt bikes and just do normal people things. We got married and had Nash, and it was when I was pregnant that they announced a Women's World Championship. It's always sort of been on my mind. I think growing up, like Catherine Prum was Women's World Motocross Champion. She's a Kiwi. And then Courtney Duncan is a few years younger than me, but obviously she's kind of been moving up the ranks. And Courtney's now 3-time World Women's Motocross Champion. And so like that idea, as soon as they announced that Women's World Championship, like I knew I was still competitive on a motorbike, and I was just like, it's something I'd really like to give a go. I wasn't really sure how it was going to evolve at the time, but being on Equal Machinery was really appealing to me. It runs basically the exact same format as what we ran in the European Junior Cup, where they transport all the bikes around and you turn up with a mechanic and the bike's yours for the weekend, essentially. Really limited amount of what you can do to the bike, and then you put it in the truck with everyone else's bikes and go home. So that format really appealed to me because I think it's easier for us to be competitive doing that way, rather than having to be in the right team and have all those components in place. So, but I was pregnant. It was very impractical. We kind of just watched and like took interest in it, but nothing amazing because we had other stuff on our plate at the time, but did think I'd really like to give it a go. And I told Ken Dobson, who's been a supporter of mine over the years, that I'd like to give it a go and that I want to go do a wild card because I just want to see what it's like in person. And obviously the Spanish girls are really, really fast, and that was really obvious from watching on TV. So like, to be totally transparent, I wanted to go over and make sure that it was fair. Like I wanted to go see that everyone was given the same bikes, that it was something that you as a New Zealander or from Chile or Japan or from wherever you are could go compete and compete on equal footing with these girls. And that's what I saw when I went into the wildcard. They're just super talented and they've been racing for a really long time and they are really, really fast. So I guess I just had that challenge in front of me of like, I want to go race with them and try beat those front runners. So yeah, just I guess grew over time. The
it is
desire
fascinating
be there
to
and
me.
competing.
Yeah, it is fascinating to me, regardless of gender. You think back. I think back to the I suppose pre-modern MotoGP era or pre-modern World Superbike era. Aussies, Americans, not that many Italians or Spanish were at the top then. You think Wayne Rainey and all the great names of the past, and there's something happened where the Spanish just started dominating. I don't know if you have a point of view on that, but I've noticed that it's quite a recent thing.
Yeah, I actually saw, so in my career, it's always been the Spanish that
Okay.
have been really dominant. And I actually saw firsthand when I was living in Italy is when Valentino started up VR46 Academy. And then I've seen over the years the impact that that's had in bringing Italian. And now you look at the front of many of those fields, like from 600 Super Sport up, that Italians are just super duper competitive. So I think there's just some initiatives like that, and the Spanish Federation have just always been so strong. And now I think the Italian Federation are piggybacking off VR46 a little bit, but it shows the impact that organizations like that have. I think a lot of the Spanish came through Monlau competition and a few initiatives like that. So it really shows the impact that some of those organizations and initiatives can have. And unfortunately, like especially World Superbike, it's all on European circuits. I mean, they go to Phillip Island and can't even think where else they went outside of Europe this year. So it's based in Europe and it's really hard to beat that advantage that Europeans have. And then the thing is you need to be in a European team if you're in anything like Moto3, Moto2, Supersport, even 300 Supersport. You need to be in a European team, so you need to have all those connections and get a really good engineer behind you and things like that. So it is, I think, unfortunately getting increasingly harder for people outside of Europe to be competitive. But it's not stopping anyone. Like, I mean, Senna just won Moto2 on the weekend.
Yes.
Incredible.
That was the best race I've seen in a long time.
Oh, how good was that race?
Hey, yeah, that was the best race. Oh my God. I watched it when I go to the track. I sleep in my motor. I have a van that I sleep in at the track because I love waking up to the smell of motorcycles. And so I watched it on my iPad in my motor van at 5 a.m. the other morning. And it's like,
that would have got you going for race day.
It was awesome. And so you casually mentioned these names like Valentino, which is cool. I rode my motorcycle from Rome to the top of Italy a few times. I happened to go to Pesaro, which is a small town in Italy. Do you know Pesaro?
Yeah,
it's like the home of Italian motorcycling. It's where Benelli and some of these famous Morbidelli, a lot of these famous motorcycle companies came from. And I got to go to the town. I got to go to Trevia, where Valentino's from, and I got to ride along the road at the top and like peek down at his ranch and stuff.
Yeah,
have you ever met him or hang out with him? Or
I haven't met Valentino at all, no, but I have met his dad. Graziano was like in Italy. I lived with Sarah and Oscar Rumi, who ran a World Superbike team. So they knew Graziano quite well. We went out for dinner with him one time and my food didn't arrive and I was too embarrassed to make a scene about it, and they're Italian, like all talking, like they do. And I just sat there starving for the whole thing because I was too embarrassed in front of Valentino Rossi's dad to make a fuss that my food never arrived.
That's classic.
But he was lovely. He is like, exuberant and just lovely, but he absolutely adores rally cars. Like, I've never seen someone light up the way Graziano lighted up talking about driving rally cars. So yeah, it's pretty cool, and I guess entrenched in my mind.
Have you driven a car on the track?
Yeah, well, funnily enough, I have actually I did Otago Rally, which is one of the biggest rallies in New Zealand. Super cool experience. It was like kind of around COVID. They normally have international superstar drivers come out and do the rally, but around COVID, it was really hard to get people into the country. So they resorted to some local drivers, and one year they asked Aaron Slight to drive an Escort, and then myself to drive a Subaru H6. So
Cool.
yeah, and I absolutely loved it. It was incredible. I loved like the adventure of it, because the thing with motorcycle racing is you kind of start riding the same tracks, and like particularly in New Zealand, I've ridden those tracks for so long now, and just it's the same track all the time. Whereas like rallying was such an adventure. You go, out into the middle of nowhere and all these new roads, and I can see how people get hooked on that sport.
I can see that. Yeah, like one of my favorite coaches in the US is this guy named Ken Hill, who's a really great coach, and he's really into racing cars now. And he's telling me like the fundamentals are the same. You got to hit your apex, you got to have your exit point, you got to understand reference points, and like there's so much that transfers. Did that feel that way for you?
Yeah, definitely. Like even to the point it's so, because you look at rallying as like quite rough, and like they're always out of control, but it's not. When you're in the car, you're actually really in control, and like smooth as fast, right? Which is the same as, and like you get that feeling when you nail it, very effortless. And like, I don't mean me nailing it in a rally car is not like Hayden Paddon nailing it, but like you just get that feeling of when you've got it right or when you've got it wrong, that flow and like that smoothness like really translated over. And I think the mechanical empathy as well is a big thing that translates between different motorsports. Like you just understand an engine and a gearbox and things like that.
Yeah, no, it's funny you talk about the flow. I was telling some guys at the track, like I'm a pretty good skier, without saying like a wanker. Like I'm pretty good skier, but I really like the feeling of hitting all the right snow, reading the snow conditions, and nailing your turns and getting to the bottom of the mountain. And for me, the track's the same. Like I actually don't really look at my lap times that much. I just love knowing that I've hit every apex and I've been smooth, and it's like an orchestra.
Yes.
And I'm curious, like as a pro racer, I'm curious your point of view on this. I see a lot of kids at the track. They turn up and they're actually quite fast, but they miss every apex. And then by the end of the second session, they're so tired. And I'm an old fat man, and I'm not tired at all. And it's because they're letting the bike ride them. They're not actually hitting their lines. I'm curious for you. I've actually asked a lot of pros this question. I asked Rocco Landers the same question. Is your aim to hit every single apex, or are there tracks where you choose not to hit the apex?
Oh, that's an interesting question. No, hit every apex. Okay. But I actually have something to comment on that, which I think you'd find interesting is I think with motorcycles these days, like they are so good and the tires are so good that you can get away with so much, and you don't always have to hit an apex, and you can still do a fast lap time. And I really noticed that riding the Yamaha R7 in WCR is like the bike is just so forgiving. There's times when I'm like, oh, I hope the cameras weren't on me right then, because I know in my head that I didn't hit the apex, but on TV it probably looks like it. Your average person wouldn't even notice, but it felt terrible for me, like we don't get much track time in WCR. We get one practice session, 25 minutes, and then it's straight into qualifying in your race weekend. So it's pretty hard to like seek that perfection like you're talking about. And you do just make mistakes as a result of trying to learn everything in such a short space of time. And it irritates me. Like I would rather, like you say, hit the apex every corner. But the thing is that with these bikes, like they're so easy to ride and so forgiving that like you can still do fast lap times with being a little bit rough or like missing apexes and things like that. And sometimes I do worry about kids these days that grow up riding 300s or the 154 strokes and then onto a 300 and then onto an R7, and because it's so different to what we grew up riding, where like you had to be really accurate and you had to be very, very smooth to go fast. These days the bikes are so good and the tires are so good that they can just get away with so much, and they don't have to be exactly online. And I think then when they get onto a 600 in particular, it can be a really hard adjustment because it's much harder to go fast because you can't get away with what you did get away with on the likes of the 300. So yeah, I think the evolution of the sport is probably not helping some of these young kids, like you say, that they can ride really, really fast, but potentially not as smooth and as accurate as you or I would like.
Oh man, that's a whole nother podcast. I'd love to
Yeah,
do that.
yeah.
I want to be respectful of
Sorry.
your time. So I'm going to use the analogy of, we're kind of into the last 2 or 3 laps of the race, which is the podcast. We've talked about your career. We've talked about you managing your tires. We're getting into the last aspect of the podcast or race.
Yeah.
And you've got the UK coming up as your next WCR race. Tell me how you feel at your performance so far, because I've watched you and you've had a couple of areas where it's becoming bad luck, but you are clearly coming in the top 2 or 4 or 5. How are you feeling about your entrance back into the racing world so far?
Oh, good question.
I think you're doing well, but I want to hear from you. Like, I
Yeah.
think you're like,
Thank you, and I think everyone does think I'm doing well. But I guess one thing I've learned over the years as well is like to not be so hard on myself, because it's really easy when you're so competitive in a sport. Like you just want to win, and then you're not really happy with anything other than winning. But I've definitely learned over the years to just like enjoy the process, and you're not going to win every single race all the time, so you have to still enjoy it regardless. Yeah, I am happy with how it's going so far. I think I've got the speed there, and I just need a few things to pull together, and it's all on me really, which is a good thing, because it means that I can work on it and keep improving and get there and get a podium finish, because like you say, I'm really close. But I think I'll be much more satisfied when I finish inside the top 3 in one of the races. And yeah, it's really exciting to think that we've still got 4 rounds to go for the championship. So Donington up next, and then closely followed by Hungary, which is a new circuit on the calendar. So that one's going to be pretty interesting.
Have you raced at Donington before?
Yeah, I have. I'm really lucky that I've raced all the tracks on the calendar other than Hungary. So yeah, Donington I've been to, and like the Craner curves are down, like fast flowing nature of the track is really, really fun. But obviously the weather is always a little bit unpredictable in the UK. So I think I'll just take that one as it comes.
They have some weird names, eh? Like Silverstone, they have like maggots and something else. And I'm like, what maggot? What maggot?
Anyway.
And then you've got McLean's Corner and Copper's Corner, I think, are the big ones, right?
Yes.
It's on the Schwantz, they call it the Schwantz curve, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to be rooting for you. Hey, what's this on your shirt?
Thank you. Oh, the Kiwi?
What you got? Yeah. Tell me what you got there. Oh, you got a Kiwi?
Yes, this is our like team mascot. It's the Kiwi that's flying.
Yeah.
We run under Kiwi Girls Can Fly is like kind of our slogan for this year, with Billy and I running in the Carl Cox team. So if anyone wants to jump on board, we're still looking for supporters.
Tell me about that.
It's called the Flight Crew. So a team of people to help us fly in this World Championship. So if anyone wants to jump on board, there's more information on my Facebook page, which is still under my maiden name, Avalon Racing.
Okay. I'll put links to all that. But to be clear, what are the opportunities? They can sponsor you, be on your helmet. What are the opportunities there?
Yeah, we will make anything possible.
Okay.
If you want to come on board, cool. But our the bulk of our supporters club it's $1,000 New Zealand dollars to join, or we can do it as a weekly payment. And we base the big perk of it is that we send behind the scenes videos from all the events and in between. So we post a lot, or we send a lot more to the supporters club than what we post online. And they're really raw. They're not edited or professional, anything. It's just Billy and I having a yarn, walking through the superbike paddock, seeing what we can dig out.
Well, sign me up. I'm gonna wire you $1,000. So you have to send me. So I'm gonna sponsor you. You got that on record. So you can come after me if I don't. We're sponsoring Cormac Buchanan too in Magello. So so trying to do our bit for Kiwis. I actually just bid on Simon Crayfar's helmet, the helmet that he wore when he won the GP.
Really?
Where he beat Mick Doohan.
Yeah, wow. This is actually this is my husband's helmet here. This is a Simon Crayfar replica that Jake bought, because
that's awesome. Simon has his Riders for Dogs charity.
Yes, so sweet.
I know. So I've missed out on my last few helmets because I'm not a high roller like all the people bidding, but I really want to get this one. Okay, that's cool. And so Carl Cox as well. I know we talked offline about this. Hey, Carl, you probably don't know who I am. He's probably not even going to watch. Huge techno house fan from way back as me. So I've seen him like literally 20 times all over different parts of the world. He's like the godfather of techno music. Do you
Yeah.
like techno music?
I actually don't have like a particular music style. I'll just
Ah,
listen to anything that makes me feel good is my kind of music. So I think,
oh yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Carl's
Carl's that
he's
one.
like a legend. So
Yeah,
so
he is.
shit, we're going
Yeah.
so over. That's cool. We'll do an edit. So have you met him?
Yes, yeah, of course. Carl spends quite a bit of time in Australia and New Zealand, and so he just comes to the racetrack and watches the racing because he loves it. And he sponsored some sidecar crews for a while who race sidecars in New Zealand. So he comes out, hangs out, and supports them. And yeah, then he sponsors the Carl Cox Motorsport Cup, which is like a bit of a grassroots series for based out of Auckland, actually.
Really?
It's been really successful over the years, and a lot of that is thanks to Carl's support. So yeah, he's I couldn't say enough about him. He's just like the friendliest guy, and you'd have absolutely no idea that he's a world famous and respected, and like you say, like absolute legend of what he does. He's just genuinely really nice, really friendly, but he's so upbeat, and I can see like how he's so good at his career because he makes people feel good. That's what he does. He loves just a good time, and that's what he says. He loves like just coming to the racetrack because everyone's having fun. Like why wouldn't you want to be there? So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm very honored to have his support, and yeah, lucky that I could flick him a message, and yeah, he watches all the WCR races. He's like a huge fan, so
Well,
of racing in general. So yeah, it's really cool.
well, I'm definitely going to put a link to all your sponsors and all of that stuff here. And like
Thank
when
you.
I do podcasts and I do like YouTube shorts and stuff, I never use commercial music because it's really expensive. So I might send you an offline note and say, can I use one of Carl's tracks for your podcast and get his permission? I don't know, because I love his music. I could choose like one of my favorite tracks. I don't know if you would say yes or not, but if I don't get permission, I get in trouble with YouTube. So it has to be like permission from the
Yeah.
artist.
Okay, right. Yeah, we'll ask him. It's for a good
Oh,
cause, right?
yeah. I'll send you a link to the track I want to use. God, I feel like Kiwis are like, I feel like I talk to you forever.
Yeah.
I got a question on your name. Where does Avalon come from? Is
Oh,
there a story behind that?
it's my mum just liked the name.
Okay,
Yes,
so it's not like a Brian Ferry reference or anything.
no. Like I've heard that song a lot over my life.
Yeah,
I think my mum does quite like that song, but yeah, it's just she liked the name.
it's a cool name. It's a cool name. Well, shit. I've had a great time talking to you, and I really appreciate you going over. Before we end, I have sort of, other than putting your sponsors and stuff on which we could do, like if you could give young kids a piece of advice around ambition. It doesn't matter what it is, sport, business, life, because you're clearly, there's so much more. I think success and there's so many different definitions of success, right? And it's not just about money and all that. It's a lot of definitions. If you could give like young kids aspiring to make a name for themselves any piece of advice, is there something that comes to mind for you?
Yeah, for aspiring youngsters, it is how would I best put it? Is just enjoy the process, and to not be too hard on yourself. I think in particular those that want to make it all the way and be really, really competitive, is to enjoy every step along the way, because it's not going to be perfect all the time. So yeah, just trust that long-term process. And I think the person who put it way better than me was, I listened to a podcast with Ben Spies, and when he spoke about Kayla Yakov, and he said, Kayla's like so disheartened when she finishes 7th in the AMA Supersport race. She's like beating herself up about it because she wants to be there at the front. And Ben says that 7th place today isn't going to make a difference to Kayla in 5 years' time. Like she just needs to keep grinding, keep doing exactly what she's doing now, and she'll make it in the long run. And I wish that I had someone say that to me, because, I took every single race so seriously. If it was a race in the wet and I came like 10th or something, then I was like, oh, I'm terrible. I'm not going to make it because I came 10th. And it's just not the case at all. You just have to keep grinding over that longer period of time, and trust the process, and stay calm. And unfortunately, it's a really long road. So, there's going to be ups and downs, but just, I guess, have to ride it out. That was a long-winded answer, sorry, but
No, don't be sorry. I mean, I'd say, first of all, congratulations on version 1.0 of your career before you had your baby and your family. And congratulations so far on version 2.0, which is going really, really well. And I know that not only is it tough, but women also have a harder road to climb. And it shouldn't be that way in anything in life, but that's just kind of been the reality of the world. It's moving in a better direction, but you're still part of that that change. And I think it's gonna take a few more generations of leaders like yourself. And I hope that other kids listen to you and feel that way. And I'm really excited to see you perform in the UK. It'd be awesome to hear the Kiwi national anthem there.
Yeah. Yeah, again, that's where Simon won his MotoGP race at Donington Park. So
Yeah,
it would be really, really
it
special.
would be so good.
Oh yeah,
I'm going to be up watching. I can't wait. And don't forget to send me that invoice for your sponsorship. A little bit goes a long way. And we'll make sure we put all the links up.
I think I just have to say, I probably haven't said enough. I've probably spoken about myself too much, and not. I have to say a huge thank you to Jake, my husband, and obviously my son Nash, because without their support, it just wouldn't be possible to do what I'm doing. I'm lucky that I kind of have those years of experience to bank on, because it is really tough to be doing what we're doing, juggling the family and flying overseas to race. So I'm really, really grateful for his support and that we do it together, all of us as a family. Thanks.
Yeah, no, sweet as. Yeah, that's a great way to end. It's yeah, and we need to get some of these freaking Kiwi airlines like in New Zealand and stuff giving you tickets. Come on, New Zealand, sort it out. Come on.
Business class will be great.
Yeah, biz class. Jeez, come on. Yeah, we'll have to work that angle as well. Yeah, that's a great shout out. Thank you, Avalon. I'll let you get back to your life in Australia.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Great.
Yeah, it's so great to meet you.
Well, I really hope you all enjoyed this conversation with Avalon. What a wonderful lady, how she manages to balance all these things and still race the way she does. And I hope you're enjoying these podcasts. Please take the time to write a review, give us some feedback. Quite new to this thing. I'm trying to interview interesting people, hear their stories, and I'd really appreciate feedback and any suggestions you might have. Fire them to me. It's Angus at kiwimoto72.com, Angus at kiwimoto72.com, or you can also just write a review on your favorite podcast platform and I'll make sure I see it. Thanks everyone. Ride safe. Enjoy whatever you're up to today.